Welcome, Guru Nation. Did you know that rats laugh? Is what we're starting this out with. Episode, you want to take a guess? I think
3.
I just did one yesterday and I can't remember.
317.
No, I think it's 319 actually. Okay. So episode 319, we learned from Chris Sauber that rats laugh. Can you explain this, please?
Yeah, it's something Jordan Peterson says on one of his podcasts. Well, not podcasts,
Love that
but
guy.
vlogs.
Love that guy. Anyway, so I got this is a good topic, and we're going to go live next for episode 320. But somebody posted a question, I guess a publicly facing question to the community. I guess I can mention him. He's from Macro Trials. Name is Daniel Perez from Macro Trials. And he came to our meetup, Chris. Remember, he was on the panel with us and his PI. Mm-hmm. So he tagged a bunch of research people online and on LinkedIn. So everybody should connect with him. And it's a good thought experiment for our industry, which I thought, I gave a long response on LinkedIn, and then I reached the maximum characters. So,
which is 170?
No, that's Twitter. For LinkedIn, it's 1,200 something.
Well, that's quite a bit.
Yeah, I put a lot of characters, not words. Mm-hmm. Characters.
Sure, spaces count as a character.
Let me see where this is. Okay, I'm gonna find the actual thread. So it's a good thought experiment. It's actually something that we've experienced a few times. So I'll introduce it for the rest of Guru Nation to hear. Give me your thoughts, okay? Give us your thoughts. Send it to us. All right, maybe we'll do something now that hopefully we'll have somebody doing the social media a little bit on the back end. We'll release the infographic of what Guru Nation thinks about this.
Okay.
Okay, so give the VA something to do. That's a virtual assistant.
Right. You defined that earlier.
Yeah. So let's get into this. And I have not told Chris. This is how we do these podcasts. We do not prepare at all. I don't tell Chris the topics. Sometimes I don't even know the topics. We just start talking.
This is true.
Today, this is as prepared as I'm gonna ever be because this is right in front of me here. So here's the for dialogue's sake, for the clinical research community. And for those watching and listening, okay, what would the impact be at all levels, so patients, sites, CRO, sponsor, if a pivotal phase 3 trial could meet its enrollment goals in half the projected time, assuming that quality, regulatory compliance, and site-level operations are all airtight? What would be the impact of this?
Overall, or just for that study?
For all stakeholders in this example. So the sponsor, what would be the impact? What would be the impact for the CRO, for the sites, for the patients, and for maybe the vendors?
So,
because this happens occasionally. We've been a part of this.
Sure, not too often, but yeah, you're right, it does. Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, I think the vendors would be very unhappy.
I like this. Explain. Vendors would be unhappy in this situation.
Well, sure, because most likely they're losing out on money. The longer the trial runs, the more money they're going to make.
Would contract CRAs would also...
Yeah, they're losing out too.
...be unhappy. I forgot to mention that in my comment.
Yeah.
In my comment, I went mostly positive, but I threw in some business stuff in there. But very good. So vendors would most likely be unhappy, because they charge on a monthly fee, right?
Correct.
And then contract CRAs...
Also, same situation.
...would be unhappy because they have that's their last contract. Now they need to renew it.
Yep.
Maybe the sponsor doesn't want them back on, or you could be positive about it and say, well, maybe the sponsor is going to reinvest back in.
Sure.
So that's the vendors. So now, okay, let's go to the sponsor level. What's the impact for the sponsor?
Of course, they're happy. I mean, they're saving money.
They're happy.
They're a business, right?
But what's the impact though? Besides their mood, what would that? What should that sponsor do? And then I'll read some of the answers. I'll read my answer.
So I don't think anything outside of again, saving money has changed. If it takes longer, I mean, they're still presenting to the FDA. It's the end result is still the same. If the If the results are positive, they're still submitting to the FDA. If they're negative, then they're not submitting. It's just they saved money.
Right.
In my opinion.
Right. I can't, for some reason, can't find my answer. But let me find the... okay, so basically what I said... I ran out of the... I gotta find my answer here. I'm gonna put all comments. Recent comments. Okay, here's my answer. Let's go with my answer first, then everyone else's. Okay. I will do a podcast on these topics as they are quite good. So here are some of my thoughts. Depending on the study results, the debate over consumer cost savings can begin. There is lots to unpack here, but I would assume some consumer price savings if this is a Me Too drug. Less so if it is one of a kind.
So I still would like to interject right there. I don't think there would be any cost savings to the consumer.
To the consumer? If it's a Me Too drug, I think it's more likely.
Well, I'm not sure I know what a Me Too drug is.
So if it's like, for example, like another SSR2 antagonist for like antipsychotic, okay? Like they have, the last thing the market needs is another one that's just a little better, right? That's called Me Too.
Okay.
So I think in those cases, the price savings makes sense to gain market share.
Yeah, possibly, I suppose.
The sponsors will only do this if it benefits them, as they should. We're in a capitalistic society, and that's the game. That's the rules, right? Return investments to stakeholders, all right, to investors. So basically, when you are a sponsored company, especially if you're publicly traded, your first responsibility is to return investment for your investors, right? So maximize profits for your investors. And that's before taking care of the patients, even though their mission is to serve patients.
They're still a business.
It's a business, right? So, so that's if you assume that the drug gets approved, because just because it's a pivotal trial that ends, half enrollment, it doesn't mean it's going to get approved. Exactly. So then I continue. There's also the Pandora's box of whether this sponsor is a startup biotech, mid-sized, or mega pharma, as to whether there will be an acquisition, merger, or new corporate bonds and stock repurchasing from the bigger pharmas. As far as the CRO being used, if there is one, I am sure they will be used again by this sponsor if they were to reinvest into another trial for a similar indication. Same would go for most of the sites that participated. Being a pivotal trial, the top enrollers would be audited and, assuming no major findings, would become preferred sites for the sponsor. I have actually been through this scenario and have seen the site budgets increase for the repeat sites in this exact scenario. I have also seen the sponsor give the study participants the study drug for free for a year. And they've also created phase 4 studies just for these purposes. We just were recently dealing with it.
Yep.
So we've lived through this. Cost savings to the market, in theory, yes.
It's a possibility.
This is where I said the debate over consumer cost savings can begin.
Sure.
I would assume some price savings if this is a Me Too drug, less so if it's one of a kind.
Right.
If it's the first to do something, there's no cost savings. They need to maximize, and they should be. They should be rewarded. Right? So let's unpack more on the sponsor. So the sponsor, if the results are good and they think they'll get FDA approval, what's the impact?
For the sponsor.
Yeah.
Well, they can start capitalizing on their product more quickly.
And then I would plan a phase 4.
So the stockholders are happy.
Plan a phase 4 open label. Let the patients, do a long-term safety study. Let the study participants get it for free. Everyone that participated in the study has the opportunity. That was very nice by the last sponsor we worked with to do that.
Sure.
I think it was good, and it was an underserved population that needed that. So I think that's on the positive side, right?
Most sponsors, I don't think, do that, though.
No, and the bigger they are, this is like a mid-sized biotech, small to mid-sized.
Right.
The acquisition thing, okay, they could be acquired, and then a big pharma buys them, and they have their own plans. They're definitely serving their shareholders first before anything else.
They have to.
They have to, right? So what if the study results are not favorable? So they failed faster, which is good because they spent less.
They save some money.
They save a lot of money to fail faster.
Mm-hmm.
Do they go back to the drawing board? Do they do another indication? These are the possible alternatives.
Sure. And maybe they just change something, more likely than not, something key in the protocol of the original study.
Yes.
So that they have a better likelihood of meeting the end goals.
Yeah. So that's from the sponsor side. From the CRO side, I put, I'm sure they'll be used again by the sponsor if they were to reinvest in another trial for a similar indication. Same thing would go for the sites and the vendors, actually. Mm-hmm. If it's a success, why change it? Mm-hmm. Let's do the same thing. Everybody's the same. Yep. Same sites. If the indication of the new study we're doing is similar. So, for example, now we're going to see if this works for bipolar, whereas we tried it for schizophrenia before. So the sites, there's pretty much all the sites see those patients also.
Right.
So if it's a related indication, then they would do that. And then for the patient. So that's kind of what I think that was good. And the good astute observation about the vendors and the contract CRAs. Because they would be the only ones probably unhappy. Maybe the sites would be unhappy too, I think.
Possible. Well, would they? No, they would still make the same money.
They'd make the same money in a shorter period of time.
Which is actually good for them.
Well, like no, let's unpack that. Some of the sites would be happy. Others would be upset. Because if you were a new site that were just added on, right, as a rescue site, and you only enrolled 2 more patients.
Sure, you have less
But then they ended enrollment.
Sure.
Right?
In that scenario, yes.
You're not exactly happy. Right. Because you kind of wish in that case, if you're a late site being brought on, that the study is going to go on longer. Right? So they're not happy. I think the other sites are neutral.
Sure.
I think most sites would prefer
a little
bit longer runtime.
But if you
not too long to where you're just not doing anything prior to close out,
but if you met your contract obligation, right? You enrolled your 10 patients per contract, and you did that quickly, it opens up resources for other trials, right?
So that's yes. So I think neutral then for the sites.
Yeah.
Some sites
positive and some negative.
Yeah, some negative. Okay, that's good. Okay, now the second part of the question, then we're going to get into, or not the question, the thought experiment. I'm going to read some of the other comments because they're interesting. So how valuable would it be for sponsors or CROs to identify their key opinion leaders early enough to plug these key opinion leaders into a turnkey research infrastructure that would allow the KOL to activate their own investigative site as a PI outside of academia and without the traditional hassles of local IRBs and all the academic bureaucracy? So how valuable is it for sponsors to identify their key opinion leaders early, but have them... So let's say, for example, there's a huge university that you want to use, and there's a particular KOL there that you want to use, and somehow you convince them, hey, across the street is a private site, let's plug you in there. First of all, I don't know too many academic institutions that would be okay with this.
No, I'm not sure even the KOL themselves would be okay with that.
Yeah, let's... First of all, you got to assume, okay, is the KOL on board
interested
with
this? Yeah.
If they are, now you have the issue with the academic institution. A lot of these places, they restrict their PIs.
We talk to contracts with these people.
We talk to PIs every week about this. So they have contracts with them. You can't do research anywhere else. You got to let us know what you're doing. They don't just allow these things to happen. Mm-hmm. And I don't think any pharma company or respected sponsor is going to go behind an academic institution's back to steal one of their key opinion leaders. Right. So I think this is an idealistic scenario. I don't think it's possible 90% of the time.
See, and just the basics...
Or not to cut you off, but let me just put this. Don't lose your thought. Why does every KOL have to be from academia? Why can't they be private institutions that are
They
KOLs?
Are sometimes, though, aren't they?
They are. That's right.
But let's take that a step further, because I'm not even sure how you identify a KOL. So tell me how you do that first.
Usually it's like someone who's well respected by their peers. They've written a lot of peer-reviewed articles.
On this topic, on something
Yes.
similar to what this
On
drug
the
is looking at?
indication or on the drug itself or on the
Okay.
mechanism of action. And they also speak. They're constantly speaking at conferences for that therapeutic indication.
Okay.
Like oncologists that go to ASCO and speak and are like famous in that world. That's a KOL.
Okay.
The reason those guys are valuable, and gals,
Sure, they push their product. That part I understand.
well, not just push their product, but they can help author future protocols for that sponsor, and they can attract other investigators to be interested in participating in that study.
Sure. Somehow it's business related.
Yeah,
Right?
of course it's all business. This is all business. We're in America.
That's what I'm
It's
saying.
capitalism.
That's what I'm saying, though. I mean,
The most capitalistic
somehow
society
the
in the
KOL
planet.
is driving something.
That's right. That's right. But this question assumes that KOLs are only at academia, and
Mm-hmm.
I think they are. Many of them are, and I don't think I don't think it's that easy to take one of these KOLs out of that setting and put them into our site here. Like
Right.
I don't think. I mean, we'll welcome them. But I don't think they're going to be allowed to just do that.
Or interested.
Right. Right.
I mean, to my understanding, the KOLs typically don't make the best principal investigators.
But in hypothetical scenario of if it's possible, how valuable would this be for sponsors and CROs? Tremendously valuable.
Sure.
The issue is in the execution.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible. Not impossible. Nothing's impossible, but this is unlikely to occur on a day-to-day basis.
No, I would agree.
So let's read some of these comments, all right? Without naming names. One guy put, I'm afraid that one size doesn't fit all in research. Creating active networks has certainly been a recent wave that has offered great dividends and expedited our process. However, for special populations, rare diseases, complex technique trials, even specialty areas like dermatology, I believe sites need to stay nimble, accurate, and precise in their execution. Some trials are too complex to be turnkey. They require focus and solid science and understanding from the sites about the physiology, pathology of the conditions, as well as the MOAs of the study's product, so the method of action of the studied product, and the compromise of the patient subjects, be it a device, pharmaceutical, or method. While many others are perfect for the quick turnkey startup and conduct, I love the concept and I've always been a strong advocate of collaboration. My belief is that in our industry, our competitors are the pathologies we try to eradicate, alleviate, and I would love for us all to create a KOL forum to see how we can best implement this concept. Thanks for getting this dialogue started. So that's one of the comments. What do you think? You agree?
I think it's a lovely word salad.
Yes.
I'm not sure until the last sentence or two it's even addressing.
Basically saying you can't turnkey everything.
No, I understand that part.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of word salad going on.
We need a KOL forum. We need to collaborate better because at the end of the day, our only competitors are these diseases we're trying to eradicate.
Sure.
Another comment. Cost cutting would be huge, of course. Perhaps having more realistic inclusion-exclusion criteria might help with finding participants. Yes, but the sponsors don't do this because sometimes the FDA tells them that this is what they want to see. So it's not like the sponsors just... And in some cases, sponsors are cherry-picking patients so that the results favorably show.
If they can, they will always,
the...
if they can, they'll always do that.
Of course. Academic medical clinics are hard to work with, but completely using central IRBs for all studies will help them move quicker. That won't work because most use local IRBs. Another comment.
Wait. I only half heard that response. How is using central IRBs going to help with the selecting KOLs?
No, not for KOLs. Academic medical centers are hard to work with.
Oh, okay.
But completely using central IRBs for all studies will help them move quicker.
Yeah, I don't think that's still going to resolve working with the KOLs.
It's not going to resolve working with the KOLs at all, and it's also an idealistic...
Sure, it just makes it easier to work with the academic unit.
And it's also an idealistic concept because this central IRBs, like these academic institutions, are so rigid. Okay, it's funny. I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Innovators by Walter Isaacson. I'm actually listening to it on how the computer and the internet got invented and how it's like a collaborative effort amongst a bunch of people across a couple generations. So it wasn't, you can't pinpoint any one person and say this guy created.
It was Al Gore.
He's in it too.
He created the internet.
Yes, but he kind of had a part in it as well.
Yeah, he had a small part.
Right. So but that's the thing. Like all these people had a small part. It's like a mosaic.
Sure.
Right. But it's funny because the internet was created with it. Academia was heavily involved with the government and with military.
Yeah.
Right. And back
the internet
then,
started with the military. It was the purpose.
And so back then, here's the interesting part. This was only in the 60s. So what? 60 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
60 years ago. Academia back then was very much anti-establishment, anti-government. Like they didn't want to. They did this partnership with the government, but they weren't like bureaucratic. They were the opposite of this.
How times have changed.
They were like free thinkers. Now academia is all bureaucratic.
And all government.
Right? So local IRBs.
Pushing communism.
Yeah. So now you've got, all this bureaucracy, all this red tape. They're not going to let a KOL just go somewhere else. They're not going to switch from their local IRB to central IRB. I mean, these things are just not going to happen in the current landscape we're in. Who's to say in 2050 maybe it's different? Because maybe we need to go through another crisis, which many are predicting is coming up, for this to change again. Who knows?
Sure.
Who knows? But right now that's not the case. Another comment. The savings of hundreds of millions of dollars would be a game changer on all levels. Products could fail or succeed faster and cheaper. Sponsors and CROs invest heavily on resourcing PIs who can clear regulatory quickly and begin enrolling. It seems that outside the slow trudge of academic hospital sites, it is rare to have the extensive populations necessary to meet enrollment for some studies. And academic sites are rarely agile enough to accelerate timelines. I like private sites for speed and flexibility, but it tends to be more difficult for them to enroll large numbers. I like the idea of turnkey infrastructure for willing PIs. It could be like trial Airbnb with the coordinators, monitors, and budgets.
Yeah, all great points.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I still don't see how any of these people, for the most part, are addressing the KOL topic, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, the KOL is going to plug into a turnkey private site. Basically, what they want to do is cherry pick the best of both worlds.
Right.
We want the famous KOL. Well, many times they're famous because they are at these academic.
They're associated with the academic,
right? And now they want them to do research when it's convenient for the sponsors and the private sites. These are just thought experiments, guys. Sure.
Okay, so these aren't actual people that we can just toy with them as we see fit.
Right. These are not pawns in your chess game.
Right.
Or kings or queens. Okay. Another person. All right. This is from a sponsor. Incredible value is the short answer. This would impact various stages of the clinical development process, and for study sponsors, a potential great savings on cost, which in turn may have a great impact on drug pricing at the end.
So these people are just addressing the first question, not the KOL question.
Yes. The overall value on the decreased timelines and life-saving drugs going to market sooner is the goal. Yeah. So, those are some of the comments. What do you think as we wrap this up? Do you want to mention the tip of the day for the sites out there dealing with some of these big CROs?
Oh, I know what you're referring to.
You want to introduce that one, or do you want me to?
No, I don't think you should introduce. Well, don't use their name.
Of course not.
Okay.
When have I ever used anyone's name? I don't even use the names of the people leaving comments on LinkedIn.
True.
And they're doing it publicly. Okay, so one of our clients is dealing with a sponsor. In their contract, it states, what does the contract actually state about screen failures?
Well, I don't recall it verbatim, but it says essentially that they'll pay 50% of screen failures.
Okay.
Right, but in the way it's worded, it's not exactly clear that it states that. But that's what you would assume by the way it's worded.
So it's tricky the way it was worded. Okay, and then so now this is something new we have to look at now when we negotiate budgets.
Yeah, when I actually did that one, I saw that, and again, I just assumed poorly worded, but this is what it's meant, right? And what the CRO is now stating is no. What that means is you have to randomize one patient until you get paid for screen failures, and nowhere in there does it say anything of that nature.
Yeah, if that's what they wanted, they should have put that in there.
Yes,
right?
It doesn't say anything in that regard at all.
So what's the tip for the sites?
Just, I guess...
Make it crystal clear in your contract.
Well, you could have problems there too, because if that's what they intended, then you're certainly not getting paid for screen failures if you don't randomize a patient.
Right.
I think in a roundabout way, this is actually safer to get paid for screen failures, kind of, that it's not entirely clear that you have to randomize a patient. But if you don't want to play any kind of games, in other words, you have to fight for the money, if you don't want to have to do that, then yes, make sure it's crystal clear what is meant by your screen failure clause.
So in this case, this is a big CRO, a huge CRO dealing with a tiny sponsor. They are trying to conceal who the contact person is at the sponsor. And so we have a feeling, and then the contract was signed by the CRO, not the sponsor. Yep. So we have a feeling that the CRO is benefiting tremendously by using this little loophole they created.
Some sort of arbitrage or something.
Yeah. They're using this, they essentially created a loophole that they can do this with. Because they knew that this would be a high screen fail rate. And this is not the only site dealing with it. It's just the only site in this protocol that's one of our clients that we know about. Right?
Yeah.
So that's it. Tip of the day. That's how we end it. Now we're going to go do a live stream next, today in clinical research. And we'll catch you all later. Bye-bye.